The scent of roasted turkey drifted through the quiet house, mingling with the buttery warmth of cornbread stuffing and the sharper notes of cranberry relish. Patricia Greer adjusted the collar of her sage green blouse and pressed a palm flat against her apron, smoothing invisible wrinkles. Outside, bare branches clawed at a gray November sky, their shadows dancing on the curtains like memories she hadn't invited. She had woken at dawn, as always, to begin cooking. No one asked her to, but this was tradition. This was what matriarchs did, even if no one used that word anymore. The front door burst open around noon, ushering in cold air and louder voices. Mom, her eldest, Mark, called out, already halfway through the living room with a bag of groceries he hadn't needed to bring. Don't worry, we grabbed some store-bought rolls just in case. Patricia met him with a practiced smile. Thanks, sweetheart. But I made the honey oat ones you liked. Mark barely nodded, already moving on, barking over his shoulder. Hope they're softer than last year's. Behind him came Lena, his wife sleek in a cashmere coat, boots that had never seen mud, and a slightly clipped tone. This looks cozy, she said, glancing around. You've still got that old rug. Huh? Patricia's eyes flicked to the rug, faded. Yes, but clean, comfortable. Home. Well, it's been here longer than any of us, she said softly. The children darted through next, barely glancing at their grandmother before reaching for phones, snacks, and the remote. No greetings, no hugs, no how are you. Patricia bit the inside of her cheek. In the kitchen, she moved through motions she could do blindfolded carving, seasoning, plating, but today it felt mechanical, like she was cooking for ghosts. Later, as everyone gathered around the table overflowing with casseroles and stories, Patricia took her seat at the head. She waited for the silence, the space where grace was usually said. It didn't come. Instead, Mark raised his wine glass to surviving another year. He laughed, and to Mom, who insists on hosting even though we all know she should be taking it easy. A few chuckles. Patricia blinked. Her fork hovered over her plate. She didn't speak. The meal unfolded with the ease of practiced roles. The men debated politics. Lena scrolled through her phone. The kids argued over who got more pie. And Patricia. She disappeared in plain sight. So, Mark said mid-meal, cutting into his turkey, have you really thought about downsizing? Or maybe even a retirement village? You'd have friends, help, activities. I have friends, I have activities, Patricia said evenly. Mark leaned back. Mom, be realistic. Something flickered in her chest, a slow burning ember. She didn't argue, not here, not now, but she felt it, the shift, the quiet ache of being managed like a schedule instead of respected like a woman who'd survived cancer, buried a husband, and raised 3 children alone. When dinner ended, they retreated to the living room. Patricia cleared the plates alone. She didn't ask for help. She didn't want their reluctant pity. The kitchen sink steamed as she washed the last casserole dish. Her hands, veined and careful, moved slowly over the warm ceramic. Outside, the wind had picked up. Dry leaves scraped along the walkway like brittle regrets. She stared at her reflection in the window pane. Her face was older. Yes, softer, but not gone, not irrelevant. She reached into the drawer by the stove and pulled out a spiral notebook, the one she'd used for grocery lists and recipes. She opened to a blank page, uncapped a pen, and wrote in firm strokes. Step 1, listen, not to their noise, but to yourself. She underlined it twice, and for the first time all day, Patricia smiled. The garden chair moment. The morning after Thanksgiving arrived with a hush. No leftover laughter, no early calls, just the crisp stillness of a house that had once overflowed with energy and joy but now echoed with the quiet aftermath of being overlooked. Patricia Greer stirred her tea slowly, watching the steam curl upward in lazy ribbons. The kitchen, once a battlefield of roasting pans and casserole dishes, now looked almost sterile, wiped clean and oddly hollow. She stood at the back door, her hand resting on the cold brass handle, then pushed it open. The air outside bit at her cheeks sharp. November cold, scented with damp earth and chimney smoke. She stepped carefully onto the back porch and followed the familiar stone path, her slippers brushing fallen leaves out of the way like forgotten thoughts. The maple tree stood mostly bare now, branches clawing at the sky, framing the faded blue morning. Her garden chair waited under the arbor, Alan's chair, the one he'd built in his last healthy summer. The seat was worn smooth, the back still sturdy. She sat, pulling her wool shawl tighter around her shoulders, and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The garden was asleep now. Hydrangeas had curled in on themselves, hostas brown to brittle fans, and the roses were reduced to thorny silhouettes. And yet, Patricia didn't see decay. She saw proof of all she had planted, all she had nurtured, and all that would return. Birdsong cracked the silence. A sparrow hopped along the fence. Life quiet. Observance still hummed in the background. Patricia reached into her pocket and pulled out the little spiral notebook, the one from the night before. She turned past the page where she had written, "Step 1, listen. Now," she added, "Step 2, remember who I am." She stared at the words. The pen hovered. Then she began to write beneath it words not just for the page, but for her soul to reread when the days got heavy. "I'm the girl who won the 8th grade science fair with a model of a heart made from yarn and tubing. I'm the woman who taught hundreds of children to read, to speak kindly, and to keep their hands to themselves. I'm the mother who worked nights at the library, who made Halloween costumes out of old tablecloths, who paid off the mortgage after Alan's diagnosis, who never missed a recital or a soccer game. I am not someone who needs permission to exist." A gust of wind lifted the corner of the page, but her grip didn't falter. In the distance, a dog barked, a car passed, but the moment remained. And for the first time in a long while, she let the silence settle over her, not as something empty, but as something sacred. Her spine straightened. Her hands, though thin and lined, curled into a quiet strength. She whispered aloud, to the garden, the trees, the cold sky above, and to herself. "They may forget who I was, but I never will." Then she stood up, slowly, deliberately, because Patricia Greer wasn't fading. She was gathering. The senior center revelation? It had been years since Patricia stepped foot inside the Willowbrook Senior Community Center. She remembered when Alan used to volunteer here, reading aloud to veterans and calling bingo on Thursday nights. Back then, she thought the center was for other people, for those who needed it, not for her. Certainly not for someone who still handled her taxes, baked bread from scratch, and organized every family holiday. But the house had been too quiet since Thanksgiving, not peaceful hollow, so that Tuesday morning, Patricia folded her cardigan over her shoulders, laced up her walking shoes, and made her way to Willowbrook with cautious resolve. The building stood like a brick and glass invitation just off Main Street. Snow flurried lazily through the air as she walked up the ramp to the front door. Inside, warmth embraced her. So did the scent of cinnamon coffee and old books. The front desk volunteer, a young woman with bright blue glasses and a floral headband, smiled, welcome and first time here. Patricia hesitated. It's been a while. She scanned the community bulletin board. Most of it was cheerful clutter craft classes, flu shot reminders, bridge tournaments, but a handwritten sign stood out, tacked with a red pushpin. Self-worth after 70, a weekly gathering for reclaiming, voice and value, led by Helen Raymond, Tuesdays at 10:30, Room C. It was 10:27. Without giving herself the chance to overthink it, Patricia followed the sign down the hallway. She passed doors labeled yoga, memory lane scrapbooking, and caregiver support. Then she found Room C, slightly ajar, laughter leaking from its edges. Inside, a semicircle of folding chairs cradled a dozen or so seniors, all chatting over paper cups of coffee. They looked ordinary, unremarkable, but the energy in the room felt different, awake. At the front stood a woman in a scarlet shawl and bright coral lipstick. Her hair a short, wild crown of silver. She looked like someone who'd once ridden a motorcycle, or, at the very least, told someone off at the DMV. "Welcome," the woman called, spotting Patricia. "Grab a seat. We were just about to start." Patricia moved carefully to the edge of the circle and nodded. "Sorry I'm late." Helen grinned. "No such thing. You're exactly on time for your own beginning." A few women murmured approval. Helen began by pointing to a whiteboard behind her, where she'd written in capital letters, "You are not invisible. You've just been taught to be quiet." That sentence hit Patricia like a warm slap. Familiar, direct, too close to the bone. Helen's voice softened. Somewhere between child-rearing and retirement, between our first gray hair and the day someone calls us dear in a grocery store, we start to disappear. People speak over us, for us, around us. Today we reclaim what's ours, our voice. Around the room, heads nodded. One woman wiped her eyes. Another, in a turquoise sweater, chuckled. "Speak for yourself. I haven't shut up since menopause." Laughter broke the tension. Even Patricia smiled. Helen continued, "We're going to talk today about value. Where do we find it when the world stops seeing it? And how do we show others that we still have stories to tell, wisdom they can't Google?" Each person shared. Some talked about being ignored by doctors, others about adult children who made decisions without asking. One man spoke of losing his driver's license without ever being consulted. When it came to Patricia, she hesitated. She cleared her throat. "I had my family over last week, Thanksgiving, and I just felt like the wallpaper." Helen tilted her head gently. "Noticed only when you peel off." Patricia nodded. "Exactly." "Did you cook?" "I did everything." "Did anyone thank you?" A pause. Patricia looked down. "Not really." Helen didn't scold, didn't pity. She simply said, "Then maybe it's time they earn it." After the session, Helen approached her while stacking chairs. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The look of a woman who's finally tired of pretending she's not tired." Patricia chuckled, surprised by her own honesty. "You're good." Helen winked. "I'm just old enough to stop caring what anyone thinks. You'll like it here. Come back next week." Patricia smiled, but didn't answer. Not yet. That night, after dinner, and the silence that followed it, she sat at her kitchen table with her journal open beneath a soft amber lamp. She flipped to the page after step 2, remember who I am. Then she wrote, "Step 3, say what I feel without apology." Below it, she scribbled one more line. "No one gets to define how useful I am, not even my children." She underlined it twice, then circled it for good measure. And for the first time in months, she looked forward to next Tuesday. 6 changes that changed everything. The transformation didn't happen in one sweeping, cinematic moment. No dramatic speeches, no thunderclap revelations. It came slowly like the thawing of frost in early spring, one choice at a time, one line in a journal, one unshakable whisper in Patricia's soul that said, "Enough." She didn't tell anyone she was changing. She showed them. Change 1, drawing the line with love. It started on a chilly Wednesday morning when Mark called, "Hey, Mom, just following up on what we talked about. I spoke to a financial advisor friend. He could help you organize your accounts. Maybe even take over some things, just to keep it streamlined." Patricia stirred her coffee with one hand and held the phone with the other. She listened. Then she spoke. "Mark, I love you, but I've paid off this house, managed 4 separate bank accounts during your father's illness, and kept us fed during inflation, layoffs, and a leaking roof. I think I can handle my savings." There was a pause. "Okay, Mom, I was just trying to help." "I know," she said gently, "but help starts with respect." Change 2, moving her body, moving her mind. The next week, she joined the silver stretch class at the community center. The room smelled faintly of eucalyptus and old sneakers. The mat squeaked. The instructor was barely older than her grandchildren, but Patricia stood tall at the back of the room, determined. Her body protested, knees popping, hips groaning, but she stretched. She breathed. She showed up. After class, another woman offered her a ride home. Patricia declined. "No thanks, I'm walking. It's only 8 blocks, and I haven't walked just to walk in a long time." The other woman smiled. "That's the spirit." And it was change. 3 speaking without shrinking that Sunday. Her daughter Julia called, casual, breezy, a check-in that turned into a monologue. "You should let us order your groceries from now on. I mean, I saw you were still going to the store yourself. That can't be safe." "Mom?" Patricia inhaled. Then, with calm precision, said, "I appreciate your concern, but please don't make choices for me without asking me with respect. I still know what lettuce I like." Silence on the other end. Then Julia laughed nervously. Okay, got it." But Patricia knew she didn't have to raise her voice to be heard. She just had to own it. Change. For reclaiming connection. Patricia had nearly talked herself out of rejoining her old book club. "They probably don't remember me," she mumbled as she buttoned her cardigan. "What if I'm out of the loop?" But she went. And they did remember her. "Pat," cried Marjorie, wrapping her in a lavender-scented hug, "we were just talking about the time you made us read that Russian novel none of us finished." Laughter. Tea. Debate, heated and hilarious. Patricia felt herself filling out again, like sunlight returning to the corners of a long-forgotten room. Change 5. Celebrating herself. Without waiting for permission. Her birthday arrived with little fanfare, just a few text messages from the kids and a card from the pharmacy. Patricia stared at the calendar. 74. She stood up, called her 3 closest friends from the wellness group, and said, "I'm throwing a tea party. Just us. Wear something ridiculous. I'll make lemon cake." They came. They brought scarves, hats with feathers, and stories about being divorced twice, surviving chemo, and raising great-grandchildren. Someone brought a karaoke machine. Someone else brought wine. Patricia brought joy. And for the first time in a decade, she didn't hope to feel special on her birthday. She decided to change 6, writing the truth each night. By lamplight, Patricia wrote not just what happened, but how she felt. When Lena interrupted her during Christmas planning, she wrote about the sting. When the woman at the bank called her sweetheart and offered to explain the forms, slowly she wrote about the rage behind her calm nod. And when she danced alone in the kitchen to a Sinatra song, remembering how Alan used to spin her barefoot on the linoleum, she wrote about the ache of missing him and how it no longer hurt as sharply. Journaling became more than a habit. It became her mirror, her permission, her promise. By the end of December, her children hadn't exactly changed, but Patricia had. They noticed it too. She answered questions differently, held her gaze longer, smiled less to placate, spoke more to contribute. She didn't ask for space. She claimed it. And little by little, the people around her adjusted not because she demanded it, but because she modeled it. That night, she wrote in her journal, "I am not their project. I am not broken. I am still growing, still blooming, and I am not done yet." Standing her ground. The snow had come early that December, blanketing the neighborhood in a soft hush from her living room window. Patricia watched the world outside turn pearl white, children's laughter echoing faintly as they built uneven snowmen on driveways. Inside, her home was warm and still. Candles flickered on the mantel. A soft Nat King Cole record played in the background. Patricia stood near the fireplace, her journal open on the side table, a pen nestled in its spine like a sleeping bird. She had written last night, "Tomorrow, I will not retreat. I will speak, not for approval, but for truth. I will not shrink for the sake of keeping peace that never served me." At 10:03 a.m., the doorbell rang. She knew who it would be. Mark. He was punctual, efficient, dressed in layers of well-tailored wool, with gloves he probably bought from a department store where no one over 60 worked. He kissed her cheek and stepped inside with that familiar energy, half affection, half impatience. "Wow, still cozy in here," he said, glancing around like he was surveying a property. "Smells like cloves. Did you get that humidifier I told you about?" "I got a better one," Patricia replied smoothly. "With a lavender cartridge?" He gave a tight nod. They sat. She poured tea. He didn't touch it. There was no small talk. He launched straight in, like he always did. "Listen, Mom, I've been looking into a couple of really nice senior living communities. One in particular has wellness programs, memory care, beautiful walking trails. It's 5 minutes from Julia's house. I could help with the deposit." He said it all kindly, gently, the same tone he'd used to explain taxes to a teenager. Patricia placed her teacup down with deliberate care. "Mark," she said. Her voice wasn't raised, but it carried something new, something grounded. "I'm not moving." He blinked. "I just look. I'm not saying today or tomorrow, but I worry." "I know you worry," she interrupted, not harshly, but firmly. "You worry because I'm old, because I take my time, because I don't answer texts immediately or need help changing a light bulb." Mark stiffened, caught. She leaned forward slightly, "But worry doesn't equal control, and love doesn't equal decisions made for me." He opened his mouth to respond, but she kept going calmly, clearly. "You forget I raised 3 children. I wiped your nose during flu seasons, packed your lunches, and sat through 100 freezing soccer games. I kept this house going while Dad was sick. I paid every bill, changed every air filter, and survived cancer without asking you to move a muscle." The air between them froze. Patricia continued, her voice soft but slicing. "Do you really believe I need to be managed, or is it just easier if I'm tucked somewhere convenient?" Silence. Finally, Mark sat back, his posture cracked. Just slightly. He wasn't angry. He looked lost, maybe even ashamed. I didn't mean it like that, he said quietly. I know, she said, but meaning well isn't the same as doing right. If I need help, I'll ask until then. I need you to trust me to live, not to survive to live. Mark exhaled, nodding slowly. Okay, Mom. He looked around the room differently now, not like a caretaker surveying terrain, but like a son seeing a home he had nearly tried to redesign. I'll, be better about asking before suggesting, he said. That would mean a lot, she replied. Then she smiled. And you could start by trying the tea. He chuckled, finally picking up the cup. Smells like flowers. It is flowers. He sipped. Actually, not bad. They sat in a new kind of quiet one where things had been said, not dodged. Patricia didn't feel triumphant. She felt centered. Later, when he left, he hugged her tightly. You're stronger than any of us. You know. She smiled against his shoulder. I've known that for years. That evening, as the wind curled around the house like a whispering ribbon, Patricia returned to her journal. She opened to a fresh page. Then she wrote, Today, I stood, not on a soapbox, not for applause, just for myself, and I didn't shake. She closed the book gently, and for the first time in a long, long time, she slept through the night. A seat at the table again. The house smelled like orange peel and cinnamon. It was New Year's Eve, and soft music floated through the living room Benny Goodman, lively and bright, just the way Patricia liked to welcome in a new year. A pot of mulled cider simmered on the stove, and a plate of her famous molasses cookies rested on a lace doily by the window. But this year, the air felt different. Not heavier, not sadder. Lighter, freer. Patricia stood in the hallway, looking at her reflection in the mirror above the coat rack. Her silver hair was pinned back in soft waves. She wore the royal blue knit sweater her friend Helen had insisted she buy at the craft fair. It brings out your spirit, Helen had said, and tonight, just for herself, Patricia wore the pearl earrings Alan had given her on their 25th anniversary. There was no ache in doing so this time. Just memory and strength. The doorbell rang. Grandma called Lily, her youngest granddaughter, bursting in with a sparkly headband and snow-covered boots. I brought a noisemaker. Perfect, Patricia laughed, hugging her. We'll need that when the ball drops. Behind Lily came the rest of the family. Julia carried a casserole. Lena brought a tray of deviled eggs. Mark had flowers dahlias, her favorite. For once, no one asked why she still insisted on hosting. For once, no one hovered over her like a fragile vase. Mark stepped into the kitchen, looking around with a quiet nod of approval. The place looks amazing. Mom? It always has, Patricia said. You're just seeing it now. Dinner was served at the long oak table, the one that had held every major family milestone: birthdays, holidays, graduations, arguments. The table had seen laughter, grief, silence, and now, something rare and delicate: reverence. As everyone gathered, Patricia waited, hands folded, breath steady. Mark turned to her. Mom, would you do the honors and say something before we eat? She blinked. Not because she was surprised by the request, but by the sincerity in it. She stood slowly, the room growing still as the sound of forks and plates settled. I want to thank you all for coming, she began, voice calm but resonant. This table has held a lot over the years, not just food, but feelings, frustrations, fears, and sometimes silence. No one moved. But this year, I learned something. I learned that silence doesn't have to mean acceptance, that respect isn't a gift, it's a practice, one we teach each other, and one I've started demanding again. There was a beat of silence. Then Lily clapped, just once, then twice. The others joined in, softly, almost unsure at first until it became applause, not out of obligation, but admiration. They ate, they laughed, they asked her about the book she was writing, a journal. Really, she said. Though she was now up to page 87, Mark even complimented her stuffing without suggesting a store-bought alternative. When the clock neared midnight, Patricia poured the cider and passed it around. As the countdown began on TV, she looked around the table. Julia and Lena were huddled, sharing a joke. Mark leaned back in his chair, eyes glassy not from alcohol, but from something older humility. The grandkids laughed loudly, fireworks beginning to pop in the distance. And Patricia, she felt something stronger than pride, deeper than satisfaction. She felt seen, not as the aging matriarch, not as a relic of family tradition, but as Patricia Greer, the woman, the voice, the presence. The countdown echoed 3, 2, 1. Cheers erupted, and Lily blew her noisemaker directly into Patricia's ear, making her jump and laugh so hard she nearly spilled her cider. Happy New Year, Grandma. Patricia raised her glass. To the year we all remember that age doesn't erase value and voices never go out of style. They clinked their glasses together. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the house returned to its golden silence, Patricia padded to her chair near the fireplace. She opened her journal, now well worn, its edges soft with use. On the final page, beneath the steps she'd written over the last month, she penned her last entry for the year. Step 7 live like I matter because I do. And from now on, I will not wait for a seat at the table. I will build my own and invite others to pull up a chair. She closed the journal, leaned back, and smiled. Outside, the fireworks continued. Inside, Patricia Greer had already celebrated her revolution. If Patricia's story moved you, it's because you know someone like her. Or maybe you are her. Don't let age dim your light. Don't wait for permission to be heard. It's time to stand, speak, and live like you matter because you do. Share this video with a friend who needs to remember their worth. And if you've ever felt dismissed or invisible, drop a comment below. I still matter. Let's build each other up one voice at a time. Like, subscribe, and follow for more inspiring stories on dignity, health, and finding your voice at any age.